for coming to one of our E2 Tech Connects, which will indeed be recorded. Thank you, Adelaide. And I'll just provide a bit of an intro. This is a Zoom meeting, so please mute yourself unless you would like to speak. It's meant to be informal, and it's meant to be a chance to network a little bit in a way that we are getting back to being able to do. But it's also been fun because we're getting a bunch of topics out there that we haven't sort of been able to touch on in our full E2 Tech forums. Thanks for your support of E2 Tech. Thanks for tweeting about E2 Tech. We have our events are always free for students and elected officials. It's nice to be able to do that. And we've kept doing that. And we continue to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's manifesting itself in a fair number of real ways. We want it to be real. And although our board member and treasurer, David Ertz, is not on this Zoom, a lot of thanks goes to him for spending now fully 1 day a week with the company called IntWork, sort of like international work, intwork.us, and there are plenty of potential hires over at IntWork that could help grow your business. I put occasionally I try to keep a steady schedule, but usually on Mondays. But in the login only energy policy updates and news, I just put one in today about PFAS, and with it, this is a member benefit that you might not know about. E2 Tech does not lobby or advocate. You'll never see a letter to the editor, or I won't go up to Augusta or other E2 Tech on behalf of E2 Tech. We don't support or oppose legislation, but we do track, and I try to get you the benefit of that information on this section of the website, which is login members only. So check it out. Everything we do all year supported by the Horizon Foundation. Sandy Buck and his team, thanks so much to them for supporting the efforts of E2 Tech, and great partnership we have with the Maine Technology Institute. We are currently evaluating a good number of proposals on the Energy and Environmental Tech Board that just came in for the Clean Energy and Innovation Challenge. Those are two $250,000 awards that will go to Maine companies that are innovating and advancing in clean tech. That's pretty exciting. We'll be involved with administering and helping that process of evaluating those proposals move forward. And we think those announcements will come out early August. That's just one of the ways that we're working together with MTI, and really appreciate our partnership with them, as well as Burns and Mac and our sustaining champion, everything they do to support us, Bernstein Sure, Power Market, Community Solar, SMRT, Architects and Engineers. President Ellen Belknap is a board member, and this great crew here. Many of you are here on this Zoom. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. I always like to linger on this slide because you're making what we do possible all year round, including this event today. And our annual sponsors, this is a year-round event sponsorship that TRC and VHB and Maine Biz. You wonder why you see E2 Tech banner ads on the mainbiz.biz website. It's because of this partnership. We appreciate them. And there's really just one thing I want you to remember from this whole rigmarole here at the beginning, and it is this. Let's get together and have pizza and beer on Wednesday, July 21st at Maine Beer Company from 5 to 7. This is capped at 50 registration event. We've got probably 20, 25 registered-ish. I'd love for you to be there. And so this is back to in-person events. So don't miss it. And then just some housekeeping notes. This is a Zoom meeting. It's meant to be participatory. I'll defer to our panelists on their preference, but very often there's quite an active Q&A in these events, and you may pop in at any time. It also means if you don't wish to be on mic, then obviously turn your mic off. But I will impose after these slides, fair warning, for the classic smiling screenshot in which I'll ask you all to pop on your cameras briefly. It's such that it allows us to have a nice picture of everybody's here, but it also gets the discussion going a little bit after the presentation. So enough out of me. Let me turn it over to Mr. Brooke Barnes, principal at Stantec, for some opening remarks, and then I think he'll turn it over to Michael Johnson. And Brooke, thank you. And by the way, this concept is Brooke's idea. It's been a big success. So starting there, Brooke, thanks. And let's hear about the rebirth of Portland Harbor.
Thanks very much for that introduction, Marty. And yeah, thanks, Michael, if you'd pop that up. A little pun, because that's what we like to do. I'm Brooke Barnes. I'm with Stantec Consulting up in Topsom. I was principal for the development of this project, basically development being getting it to and through the permitting stage. Michael has done all the heavy lifting. You'll hear from him through the bulk of this, and I'll let him introduce himself. I've been here for about 15 years at Stantec, and Michael, maybe you want to pop on and introduce yourself.
Lobsterman, fisherman, diver, you name it, I think. He's there. He is.
And looking for the unmute button. I found it. So yes, Michael Johnson. I've been managing this project. It's been active for about 5 years now with Stantec. We've got about 20 years experience at Stantec doing fisheries and marine work, permitting, environmental sampling. That's my background.
So we thought we'd take some time. I'll go through a few intro slides here, and Michael will dive into the meat of things. So there we are, Casco Bay, the Portland Harbor. If you want to advance, Michael. And here's the CAD cell project in a nutshell. The blue area is where the CAD cell will be. That's the excavation that all of the orange area, which are the dredge areas, will go into. The material excavated from the blue area is clean, so that will go for offshore disposal. The orange areas are a little less than clean, and so those will go into the CAD cell once the hole is dug. But this gives you an overview, and you can actually see the sediment plumes. It's a very active sedimentation area, and that, if we roll to the next slide, is really what this is all about. Why do we need this project? Well, if we look at the sort of sedimentation that's occurred along the Portland waterfront, it's kind of a stalemate. It's too expensive to try to do each individual pier in and of itself. It's hard to get financing for it. It's hard to get financing for improvements on the pier when the actual berthing space is diminishing. So there's sort of a catch-22 and a stalemate going on. And the idea is we want to expand public access, restore the berthing, sort of get some economy of scale by looking at a bunch of dredge areas and looking at a least expensive disposal option as a way to try to crack the nut and figure it out. And it's been really since 2011 that the cities of Portland and South Portland have been looking for and analyzing the best way to solve this problem. If you want to go to the next slide, Michael. And this concept, just before we go to this concept of a CAD cell, dig a hole in the harbor and put these materials in it. It's been around for about 30 years. It's been done in Boston and Bridgeport, Hyannis, Providence, New Bedford. It's the least expensive option. It's the best from a human health and ecological risk option, and it's simple. And there's been now a great deal of post-construction monitoring to make sure that the concept is actually working out, and it's working out very well in those places that have been done before. So back to Portland Harbor, this is just an illustration of what's been lost in red, basically not really viable berthing anymore, and yellow, which is diminished berthing. And this is just one piece of the Portland waterfront. This doesn't represent where all the dredging will occur, but a 26% loss in the working waterfront is quite a bit. And the idea is let's get that back and get everything that's associated with it back. Roll to the next slide, Michael. And so, the biggest thing is when you're trying to figure out what to do on a scale like this, you need to engage as many stakeholders as you can and make sure that you're covering all the people who need to be covered and have an oar in the water, so to speak, and have an interest in it, both from a regulatory agency perspective, but also the users and the municipalities of Portland and South Portland and the Portland Harbor Commission. Those three entities really were the movers and shakers behind this. And if you roll to the next one, Michael. So the permitting itself, you know, it needs an Army Corps permit. It needs National Marine Fisheries Service review. It needs DEP. It needs local permits. There's really two projects. One of them is the dredge project around the piers, and the other is the CAD cell itself. They were permitted as two separate projects, but of course they're completely interdependent, and that was recognized through the permitting process. But it took a lot of meetings with agencies and a lot of meetings with stakeholders to figure out what the best path was, to what specific regulatory requirements would apply. This is the first time this has been done in Maine, so it was new to the jurisdictions. And the final concept we came up with was the Harbor Commission would actually be the applicant for these activities, along with the cities signing on, but the Harbor Commission was going to be the key mover. And in addition to those permits I talked about, one little wrinkle in this case is what's called Section 408, which is under the Corps' jurisdiction. And because there's a federal navigation channel in the harbor and the dredging that is associated with that, any activities which might have some kind of impact on that federal dredge channel have to go through a 408 consultation, which is pretty rigorous and actually caused some design changes, not because it was impacting the channel, but because it was near the channel. And Michael will talk a little bit about that later. If you want to move on. So where the money come from to get this started, to get these early stages? A brownfields grant to the Harbor Commission, and that was focused on the dredging. And it was the first time that brownfields program at EPA was used to look at this kind of an issue. And then CAD cell funding, evaluating that, doing the permitting and everything for that, came through MDOT funding and funding from the cities of Portland and South Portland. So it really was multiple entities and multiple funding sources that got us to the place we are today, which is permits in hand and now seeking the funding for construction. Roll. And so back to this overview, we'll pop this on a couple of times just so you can keep taking a look at it. And Michael's going to pick it up from here, and he's going to talk sort of about what we did to evaluate the locations and volumes and contaminants for dredging, what we did for CAD cell siting. Multiple locations were looked at and how those were winnowed down to the final selection, and then some information about the CAD cell design itself. Take it away, Michael.
Thanks, Brooke. A lot of material to go through here, so I'm going to kind of scroll through it relatively quickly, but I'm happy to discuss any topic more in depth during the question and answer session. I want to give another shout out to the city of Portland, South Portland, the Harbor Commission. They've been really running with this for 10 years now, doing a lot of the legwork. You know, Brooke and I are presenting on it. We did the permitting and investigations, but the cities and the Harbor Commission have been heavily involved all along. A lot of hours on their end, and shout out to our engineers and sub-consultants that really helped us get where we are today with, you know, two permitted projects and hopefully a path forward for funding. I'm going to start going through the dredge project with a few slides here and then transition over to the CAD cell. The dredge project, as Brooke mentioned, was investigations were funded by the EPA Brownfields grant. We worked with Campbell Environmental on that. So initially starting off, there was a lot of outreach needed. As you can imagine, there's a lot of different ownerships across the harbor, you know, South Portland side. Every pier is not owned necessarily by one owner. You have the snapshot below of Custom House Wharf and Portland Pier. You can see there's multiple owners there. So a lot of the upfront work, identifying the owners, getting spreadsheets together with contact information and having kickoff meetings and outreach. So that was quite a bit of effort on that end. And what we really were after was what was their desired depth. And to start this off, we did a bathymetric survey of the whole harbor, so we knew what the existing conditions are. And then we set up these orange polygons, which are associated with the tax parcels, and sat down with each owner and, okay, what depth would you like here following the dredge? And based on the existing bathymetry, we're able to calculate both the dredge area, which is highlighted in red there, as well as the target dredge depth for each of those. And cumulatively across the harbor, you add all those areas up, and that gives you a total dredge volume. And that dredge volume is what informs the size of the CAD cell. So when all said and done, as far as participation goes, we have 32 different pier waterfront owners and 47 different tax parcels. That includes 21 piers, 10 marinas and boatyards, the Portland Public Boat Launch, and the Portland Commercial Barge Landing. So we've identified those dredge areas, and we sat down with the agencies and talked through what testing do we need to characterize this material. And we pulled together a sampling analysis plan for metals, pHs, pesticides, and PCBs. Got out there in the harbor with a vibrocore and sampled down to the target dredge depth at each one of these dredge areas. And as you can see from these photos, a lot of anoxic black organic silts, as well as debris, as you can imagine, that's accumulated over the years in these areas. The other major component, which took quite a bit of bandwidth from us and the team during the process, was eelgrass mitigation. And I want to touch on briefly a lot of lessons learned here for us. Two of the dredge areas had unavoidable eelgrass impacts. One was the East Standard Beach Barge Landing. Currently, that's the landing point for all commercial truck traffic to the Casco Bay Islands, as well as utility vehicles, emergency vehicles, storm response, and it's currently access is restricted tidally. So the goal is to dredge that area out, all tide access for those vehicles. But there's an associated eelgrass impact with that. And then the other one is the main access channel to the Spring Point Marina in South Portland. There's a large eelgrass bed between there and SMCC, and that bed has migrated into the channel as sediments have come up, and that depth has decreased. So 2 eelgrass impact areas. And originally back in 2016, we had assumed in lieu fee payments associated with those impacts. But as we got into permitting, we sat down with the Corps and NIMS and EPA, and they really pushed for owner-sponsored mitigation, because there's no eelgrass projects in the in lieu fee queue now. So they wanted to see these impacts restored. The plus side is that the applicant here is the Harbor Commission, and they also administer all the moorings in both Portland Harbor and the Casco Bay Islands. So our conservation mooring program was initiated for mitigation, and that basically over several years it will attempt to convert up to 270 moorings that are currently located in eelgrass from traditional block and chain, which has an associated mooring scar with it, which you can see sort of in this aerial photo from East End Beach, the patchiness in the eelgrass associated with some of those moorings there, to conservation tackle, a helical anchor and conservation tackle. So that's that program. Any balance of mitigation credit will be paid for in the fee before the dredging actually occurs. Transitioning over to CAD cell siting here. Again, this first CAD cell permitted in Maine, Portland Harbor, and there's another one in the queue for up in Blue Hill area, but this is the first. Talk a little bit about CAD cell siting here. We came into the project in 2016, and there was a non-federal working group had been working for several years on looking at alternatives for dredging and disposal, and a CAD cell had risen to the top as a preferred alternative, and Fish Point in off the Eastern Prom as the desired location. There had been some sub-bottom profiling there indicating the sufficient depth of sediment. So we came in thinking, okay, we're going to move forward with Fish Point with additional investigations, but we very soon realized, the team realized that there was going to be pushback there because of the lobstering effort and some environmental concerns with that site. So we went back to the drawing board to kick the project off here with a big stakeholder meeting in July 2016 with the fishermen, the environmental groups, the pier owners, other waterfront stakeholders, and sat down, identified some alternative locations in and outside the harbor, and then ranked each one based on the technical considerations for construction and engineering, environmental habitat and fisheries, as well as the permitting, public feedback, and public uses for each site. This little table is sort of the scoring related to that. And as you can see, the Coast Guard site, which is located between the Casco Bay Bridge there and the Coast Guard facility, ranked the highest. It avoids impacts to intertidal areas, it avoids impacts to the navigation channel, intertidal and wading bird waterfowl habitat. And there's concern from the Corps about having any CAD cell siting within the actual federal channel, which included at least one of the sites because of future dredging there. So after this process, a lot of engagement, the CAD cell site is a selected alternative at the Coast Guard. A little bit about CAD cell construction here as an overview. The schematic on the left shows the digging of the CAD cell using traditional clamshell technology. You dig the CAD cell with side slopes down to your target dredge depth. For this project, we're proposing that to occur over 1 year during the seasonal dredge window, which is November to March 15th, getting that excavated out. And then we're proposing a 4-year dredge window within Portland Harbor, also during that seasonal time, to fill the CAD cell to capacity. The design of the CAD is below the existing grade, and it will be allowed to naturally cap over time with sedimentation. And as Brooke mentioned, the excavated material from the CAD cell was found suitable for offshore disposal at the Portland disposal site. A little bit about the CAD cell. We kicked this off again with more agency consultation. What information do we really need to collect out there to characterize the site from both a permitting perspective and an engineering and design perspective? So we did habitat evaluations and dive surveys, video camera work, and it's a very shallow subtidal flat located between a dredge area at the Coast Guard station and the access channel to the Southport Marina. The shallower portion of the site has been populated now by European oysters, a non-native species, and the outer portion is kind of exposed sandy silt with abundant green crabs. And as part of this process, we also did lobster dive surveys of this area. Getting into the geotechnical sub-bottom piece of this, the key criteria for siting a CAD cell is sufficient depth to bedrock. And as many of you are familiar with Portland Harbor, there's plenty of ledge outcropping. So the first step in the process was to do the sub-bottom profile, which is, there's an image of that on the bottom of the slide here, which gives you a view of the different sediment layers as well as the bedrock depth. And so we started with that. Very promising, with sufficient depth to build the CAD cell. We went back out there and did a geotechnical boring in the middle of CAD cell, which is the highlight in red there on the sub-bottom profile. And that confirmed the findings from the sub-bottom, sufficient depth to bedrock and multiple layers of sediment or sediment horizons over that bedrock, including a large mass of the Penobscot Marine formation, which is a clay. And that photo there on the top, in the top layer, you'll see between the sort of water and that blue line on the profile is this surface layer above the Penobscot formation, which is a sandy silt, and very clear boundary, as you can see in that slide, between that layer and the native clay underneath it. And that was fairly uniform across the site. Just a little schematic here showing that soft clay layer. Our CAD cell is primarily located within that. We really didn't get down into tilt around 70 feet below mud line, and weathered bedrock at 73. So good site with sufficient depth for the CAD cell. Back to the sediment testing, kind of a key problem with CAD cells is that they are sited in urban locations to begin with, and you're going to have this surface material, which is often not suitable for offshore disposal. So you end up trying to figure out what to do with that. You want to characterize it, find out what the depth of that anthropogenically impacted sediment is. And a lot of times that will either have to be held on scows, or you could do a sibling CAD cell, which is a smaller CAD cell off to the side just to hold that material. And as you can imagine, that's a large cost. And our estimates were that it was going to add basically $1 million to the project. So we went out there. This CAD cell sited closer to navigation channel. It's not within the inner burrs where we saw some of that dark, more contaminated sediment. We did some vibrocores down through that surface material and worked with the Army Corps in the RIM process to get that tested. And luckily it passed its toxicity and bioaccumulation tests and was found suitable for offshore disposal, which was big cost savings for the project. Just reviewing CAD cell design here. The CAD cell itself was about 9.5 acres, 800 feet long by about 4,600 feet wide. Because we're, the CAD cell is below grade, it's more material being excavated than what we're putting in. So around 76,000 cubic yards of material, and we're dredging down to about 50 feet below mud line. A couple key features here, you'll see the access channel. So on the left there, that's the Fore River, the Federal Navigation Channel. Because this area is so shallow, we're going to have to dredge our way into it. So that access channel will allow full tide access during disposal. Other features that were designed with a 3-to-1 side slope, and designed outside of the intertidal and wading bird waterfowl habitat. Here's a profile of the CAD there, and then just a little detail on the entrance channel and what will look like at the end of the project. We engineered a entrance berm across that channel, and as the year 4, as the dredge materials reach capacity in the CAD cell, this entrance berm will be constructed, which includes a stone toe berm and suitable materials to kind of close off the CAD cell from the navigation channel and allow for a little more capacity. Project construction, scheduling, and funding. So as we mentioned, we've received permits for the project this spring. We are busily working on the RAISE grant application. Harbor Commission and Portland are very involved with that right now, with a couple of weeks that putting that grant submission in. That's through the US DOT. Assuming award, we'll move into final design and bid specifications in 2022. That will involve some additional borings at the CAD cell, as well as putting those bid packets together and getting it out to bid. There's a couple alternative schedules depending on consultation with MARAD, filing grant award, but in the best case scenario, CAD cell construction will begin in winter 2022 with 4 years of dredging following that. And as I mentioned, the bulk of it would come from the RAISE grant, which was the former Tiger and Build grant on the former administrations. And that includes a local match, and that local match will come from tipping fees. So each of the owners will pay a tipping fee based on a cubic yard of material placed into the CAD cell. Well, look through that. Yeah, and now questions. There was plenty to talk about on all those topics, if anybody's interested in more detail.
Oh my gosh.
I'm about on time, 12:30.
Yeah, way to go, Michael.
There's a ton of good stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of that's, we spent, months on some of those topics. So if anyone has interest in any of them, I'm happy to speak more about it.
Yeah, that's a really great presentation. A lot of great detailed backstory and really took us through it. So my little trademark thing, if you're listening, would you come on camera for a quick smiling screenshot? And then I want to turn it back to Brooke and Michael to lead the discussion. It's really my only ask of you all day, other than to come to our social, which is on Wednesday, July 21st. So, all right, I think that's most of who we're going to get. So I'm going to ask you to smile on 3. And remember, I have 2 motives here, which is to get you to be smiling, makes you a little more ready to participate. This is meant to be, at this point, it's a little bit participatory. Pop right up. You don't need to be called on or anything. All right, 1, 2, 3. Wait, I screwed up. One more time. I'm going to make you smile twice. 1, 2, 3. All right, I got you that time. And now you're ready to ask a question. I know you are, and Brooke and Michael are ready. Who's going to open it up? There's one in the chat there. Brooke or Michael, if you want to take that one from Jamie.
I'm not seeing that.
Oh, can you?
You want to speak it?
Yeah, can you explain a little bit about offshore disposal of the clean material in the CAD cell? Where is it going? And then after that, I see that Julie Rosenbach has her hand up, and we'll go to Julie after this.
Michael, I'll let you handle the offshore disposal.
Yes, so there is a permitted disposal site off of Cape Elizabeth. I believe it's about 7 miles offshore, permitted to receive dredge materials. That's where a lot of the maintenance materials from the Portland Navigation Channel go. And it's quite a process for testing, which includes both sediment chemistry, bioaccumulation testing, toxicity testing, and that's been part of the issue with why we ended up in this situation. Beginning in Portland Harbor, that the collection of sediments and testing alone can be close to $100,000, and you don't know if you're going to pass or not. So a lot of these owners in the situation, well, I could spend $100,000 on testing the sediments. Certainly the least expensive option is to send them offshore, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to pass. And once you start looking at alternatives, it's really sending it to a landfill and upland disposals. You have dredging, dewatering, all those costs, trucking, and you're all of a sudden in a situation where it's cost prohibitive to do any dredging. So, did I answer the question? Any more detail on that? The testing itself.
Feel free to pop right up there, Jamie, if you like. Otherwise, maybe Julie, do you want to unmute and ask a question? I like your new glasses, by the way. They look nice.
Thanks. Thank you for this presentation, you guys. I was just wondering how, if and how sea level rise projections factored into this work that you're doing.
It wasn't a major factor, at least for the CAD cell siting. It is located in a depositional environment to begin with. And the need for the dredging, this came up at some of the city council meetings, and with sea level rise, why is there a need for dredging? But that rise is so slow over time. We've already lost all this berthing. Not only that is that a lot of these sediments in the harbor, as we found with the testing, are fairly contaminated, not high level of toxins, but contaminated enough that when you have storms and prop wash and whatnot, you're getting agitated, they're getting into the water column and causing potential water quality impacts. Some of those figures we showed some of those sediment plumes coming off those flats as it is. So we spoke more today on the berthing piece, but this is definitely has environmental benefits too by getting the sediment, which is currently bioavailable across the harbor, sequestered into the CAD cell. but not, the CAD cell itself is, I don't think sea level rise is going to impact it in any major way.
As I think Michael noted, for the CAD cell construction, it'll be a natural cap. So it will be filled to below capacity, leaving, what is it, 6 feet, or at least, Michael, at a minimum?
Depending on the area, at least 6 to 9 feet. Yeah.
And any sea level rise is, only going to increase the rate at which natural capping has occurred. And this approach to natural capping is one that's worked well in other jurisdictions. Early on, they were putting caps on top of these once they were done, which is very expensive. And then they trialed allowing natural sedimentation in these active environments like the Fore River, and said, wow, in a year, this starts having a natural cap, and in a couple of years, the benthic environment is really pretty much restored.
Follow up, Julie, or let's keep those questions coming. So I heard that we want sea level rise to be faster. Was that right? No.
No.
You weren't listening.
This is Rick Smith. Is there an order of priority of some sort for which locations will get dredged first over that 4-year period?
Yes, yeah, a lot of that will be sorted out during the process, but ideally you want to dredge your most contaminated sites first, get them at the bottom for the CAD cell, and then overlay that with some of the cleaner materials from the other dredges.
I was thinking in particular about that commercial site that you mentioned, where the right now they can't reach at all tides.
Yeah, the flip side of that is that the more time we have before we dredge that one, we get more mitigation credit by converting more moorings. So there's a balancing act there. We want to get as much mitigation credit as possible too.
Thank you.
Good question. Keep them coming. Maybe Jeff? Picking on Jeff because I know he was had some questions, or who else has got a good thing to come up with here? Anything on your mind, Dick, that you want to dig into, or Everett? Everett wins the coolest background award today.
Marty, you didn't just ask what people wanted to dig into, did you?
Yeah, I know, that's pretty bad.
I am on a Zoom with Brooke Barnes, the king of the Re-berth of Portland Harbor, and so on.
And as Michael said, it's more than just digging the berth deeper so boats can get in there. It's going to stop that resuspension, as Michael talked about, of those top layer of sediments that are contaminated when ships are pulling in and out of there. This eelgrass issue at first was, oh geez, there's these eelgrass areas, particularly at East End Beach, where it's really important to do the dredging, but there's a really important natural resource there. How do we figure this out so it's going to work out for both of those needs? And I think it's going to work out really well. By the time those moorings are refitted with conservation moorings, it's really going to extend and expand the availability of eelgrass habitat in a bunch of different areas across Casco Bay. So I think it'll be an expansive kind of a positive environmental benefit there. Yeah,
I didn't want to go too depth on the section 408 piece too, but I will mention that was a hurdle. We all know we have to go after the Corps and DEP permits, but that permission from the Corps' navigation folks takes some time, a lot of review on their end, and the Corps will not issue a permit until that permission is in hand. And we were bumped up against staffing issues with the navigation folks and delays there. So it's an important piece of the project to keep in mind anytime you're intercepting with the federal channel or any federal project. And the background on that is why it's come to a head in recent years is Hurricane Katrina and the dikes down in Louisiana. Any project now that impacts that federal project, navigation, dikes and whatnot, gets an extra layer of review.
And this project really isn't impacting the navigation channel, but it was within 157 feet, was it, Michael? What was the magic number?
Yeah.
The adjacent.
So you have the navigation channel, and then you have the channel setback, which is basically the 3-to-1 side slope coming up from the bottom. So the body of the CAD cell is outside the setback, but we do have that entrance channel intercepting it, as well as several of the dredge areas are directly against or in the navigation channel. Those were less of an issue because they're dredging it deeper. The Corps had more of a concern about the entrance channel and the berm placement, and we went back to the drawing board and pushed that berm back towards the CAD cell outside of the setback to the navigation channel.
Give any more details on the mooring? What is the conservation mooring? Is it really needed to switch over, and do all the mooring owners have to pay for all that?
Yeah, well, we are including a line item in the grant for that program, which will hopefully cover most of the costs for the actual equipment and the installation of the conservation mooring. We've done a fair amount of research into this. They've been used fairly successfully in Massachusetts, and oftentimes when some grant funding like this is available, so it's a helical mooring that's twisted down into the sediment, and then usually elastic road that comes up to a ball and some floats that keep everything off the bottom in eelgrass areas. I've talked to several harbor masters down in Massachusetts. They've been deployed with success. Eelgrass has come back. Mooring holders.
It's actually the mooring chains that do all the damage.
You're a little quiet there.
The mooring chains doing all sorts of damage.
Yes, it was the chain, as the boat rotates around, that chain drags on the bottom. So, yes. But this is sort of new domain. Helical anchors and the conservation roads are sort of a new thing. So it's definitely some, all the installers and inspectors in Portland Harbor, it's sort of a newer technology. So there's certainly some growing pains as the Harbor Commission tries to push this out. But, eelgrass is a hot topic across the state now. And, I know certainly other harbor masters in Casco Bay are looking at alternatives to mooring placement in eelgrass. A lot of times these harbors and coves are well protected and good for moorings, but they also have prime habitat for eelgrass.
Over at Spring Point, did I read or look at the diagram correctly? Will this dredging allow the Spring Point Marina to add additional docks further out toward the ship channel?
Yeah, I don't have all the details, but they got another, I think it's a federal grant to expand that marina for transient berthing, which wasn't part of this project. But there is it's one of the dredge areas includes the access channel in, which is the eelgrass area, and then some areas outside of that are associated with that expansion.
And each of the pier owners defined what they wanted. Some said not interested, and they may become interested as the project becomes more of a reality. But for our planning purposes, we had to figure out what the volume was going to be. So as each of the pier owners were approached, do they want to do something? And of course, their question is, well, what's it going to cost me? We won't know that until we know how much the RAISE grant brings in and what other sources of funding from MDOT or from the cities, how much that tipping fee will be. But it's going to be dramatically lower than any other disposal option. And once that becomes evident and apparent, then there may be more pier owners who are interested. But each of them decided what depth they wanted to shoot for and what volume they wanted to go forward based on their anticipated use. And it is the ripple effect as well that I talked about, is once this is dredged, then they're going to have more ability to approach banks and lenders and say, oh, well, look, we now are working waterfront where before we were just a mud flat. So we are a more valuable property, so we can invest in our property and refresh and renew our docks and wharves and structures on the property. So it should be a big overall win for the working waterfront.
Nah, this is kind of a dumb question, Brooke, but is there this project as we speak, some work underway?
Nothing underway, Michael, other than you can pick it up, but it's administrative and funding and getting grants together and things like that. I don't think there's any physical work going on. Is there, Michael?
No, it's been the grant application, this is the second round. We did put in a build grant application last year, which was unsuccessful. We're trying again this year. This project will be a new mechanism for funding this type of work. As you can imagine, this problem isn't unique to Portland Harbor. There's a lot of working waterfronts on the east and west coast that are dealing with sediment issues. It hasn't been an issue for the navigation channels. That dredging is funded. It's maintenance dredging. Usually it's clean enough to go offshore. But what do you do with everything else? It's very cost prohibitive. If this is successful, it already it was the first brownfields grant to do some of this evaluation. If the DOT grant is successful, it's maybe a new path forward for a lot of harbors to start dealing with some of these issues. So.
That's really interesting. We have time for one or two more questions. And after that, we're going to go to Adelaide to close us out. So, Peter, any questions? Mash that mute button, Peter, for us, or type it in the chat. Anybody else? Cogent questions better than what I asked?
No, I wondered whether Portland, as a municipality that thinks itself as a destination, is going to be able to take advantage of this good publicity.
I think absolutely. The enhanced access to the waterfront is going to be evident in the kinds of ships that you see, the number, the volume, the attractiveness both for commercial entities as well as tourism entities. And I think some of the dredging is off the state pier. Is that right, Michael?
So Portland is one of the larger, has one of the larger dredge volumes by owner, and includes State Pier, where Casco Bay lines is, and then the fire and rescue vessels. That's all there. It includes some dredging at the Fish Pier, as well as the GMRI, separate from the city. But we didn't go into the dredge areas at depth. But yeah, there's a lot of different types of dredge areas. A lot of them commercial, but we have the marinas and some public as well. And I want to just follow up on the grant a little bit too. It has a lot of support, as you can imagine. It's a win-win project. There's very little opposition, or little to no opposition. Environmental groups, the fishing community, the pier owners, the municipalities, the congressional folks, all on board. So really hoping this time around it's a successful grant.
And if you think about all those stakeholders, it's probably a unique opportunity with all of them rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, really. My mind is going to where I live in Biddeford and Saco. I've been involved with that jetty discussion for some time, and it's a different project, but it's certainly taken a while to land somewhere. This is really exciting, and wish you a ton of success with making this project work. Is there anybody who has a closing question that they haven't had a chance to get to? Now is your chance. Don't see anybody. So I want to go to Adelaide. Adelaide has been a wonderful member of the E2 Tech team for almost exactly 2 years, and she's moving on to bigger opportunities. Want to tell us what you're up to, Adelaide?
Sure, I will be the newly created board administrator at Revision, handling all their board and sustainable growth projects. So I will still be attending all E2 Tech events and pestering everyone as I email from Revision.
So congratulations to you, Adelaide. We're proud of what you've achieved there, and it's going to be a great career move for you. And E2 Tech is hiring. We've had, we can't replace Adelaide, but we've we've got some people who are going to at least try. And but if there's someone in your network that you think would be interesting to work with us, please send them my way at marty@e2tech.org. I want to again make a special mention of an upcoming event, which is going to be fun, which is, and Adelaide will be there on behalf of Revision, I understand. This, our summer social in Freeport, and many other good events that we have coming up. One thing that I hope you all have picked up on, maybe I haven't mentioned it enough, is that E2Tech has been awarded, together with CADMIS, the contract to develop the state's clean transportation roadmap. So we will be working on policies related to that. I think the goal is to figure out the best levers to pull and the best place to spend money to hit our goal of actually having 85% of all new vehicle sales be EVs in just 9 years. So it's a pretty aggressive goal set by the Maine Climate Council. If you know how to make that happen, let me know, because I'm all ears and we want to feed into the best possible model that we can and present the best options. Maybe it's a business tax deduction for EVs, who knows? We want to model all these different policies, not just the ones that have been modeled before. And we want to learn about all of the challenges, not just the ones that have already been thought of. So that's my ask to you. And closing thoughts or remarks. Why don't I go to Michael first and then Brooke on this project.
I'll just say thanks for the opportunity for letting us present on today. It's been a real interesting project for me over the last 5 years, and fingers crossed that it's a successful grant opportunity.
Where do you live, Michael?
I'm out on Long Island in Casco Bay.
Uh-huh. So you know this stuff.
He's getting his dock dredged, I think, getting his mooring replaced or something. I don't know. That's why he's been doing this for 5 years. It really has been a fascinating intersection of environmental, of science, of policy, of politics, of finance. If you think about the number of touches that have had to occur to pull together all the dock owners, the Lobstermen's Association, all of the regulatory agencies, the municipalities, it really is a unique project that has gone gently forward with plenty of obstacles. And I do want to applaud Michael, because he's done all the heavy lifting for these last 5 years in all of those realms. And it's just really gratifying for us to have been a part of it. The cities of Portland and South Portland and the Harbor Commission, as Michael said, they're the leaders, they're making it happen. And it's just exciting for us to have helped make it happen. And I think we're excited to see it all the way through. I've told Michael over and over again for the last 5 years, this is going to be your legacy for Portland Harbor, Michael, that you helped make this happen. And I think it's pretty exciting. So let's keep our fingers crossed that those federal dollars come through and we're able to make it a reality.
Very good. Well, thank you for joining this great E2Tech Connects. No more on the schedule right now, but we love your ideas. These discussions are a lot of fun, and stay tuned for upcoming stuff, and reach me anytime at Marty, MERTY, at e2tech.org. Michael and Brooke, thank you again. See you on July 21st at Maine Beer Company, and free pizza, and I'll buy you a beer if you show up. Look forward to seeing you there, and stay cool.
Have you done the math on that, Marty? 50
that
people?
Could get expensive. that could get expensive, and I could lose my E2Tech credit card privileges. I do need to be careful there, but anyway, maybe I'll give you a slice of free pizza. That's probably a better offer.
Stay cool, everyone.
Stay cool. Have a great afternoon. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.